Hey guys, VHS82 apostrophe, aka Rob from Georgia, here with you with episode 4 of this ongoing Space 1999 series. And we are looking at the episode that is entitled Ring Around the Moon, directed by Ray Austin, known for his work on the Hardy Boys Nancy Drew Mysteries in the latter end of the 70s, which I was watching all the time as a kid and reading the books at that. And its cinematographer, I messed this up, Frank Watts. Doing these things is really fun because every once in a while you suddenly find yourself discovering something so brand new. And one of them was Frank Watts worked as cinematographer on the 9 episodes that was the Hammer House of Horror in 1980. And I realized looking at episode 1, The Witching Time, I think it is, Ian McCullough, of all people, zombie fame, is in it. So, and that apparently is free, the 9 episodes, on one of those free apps you get on, you can download on your TV. So I am definitely going to be checking that out, mostly because it's Hammer and Ian McCullough, and it's interesting to take a look at the cinematography work of this guy, seeing it unfold in Space 1999 and yet seeing it in another show. So that's interesting. A couple things real quick. We are in episode 4. I do want to remind you that I got a couple things going on right now. My top 100 all-time personal favorite horror films, again, of all time. That series, it's a 10-parter, is unfolding. My shelf-by-shelf DVD is unfolding. Got those stuff dropping a little erratically, but they're falling. There's a lot of stuff already down there. Anyways, so before I get into this episode, I do want to mention, I always forget, and I don't think I've ever mentioned it, but one of the things this TV series does is at the beginning of each episode, there is in big, bright lettering, this episode. And so, as the theme music kicks in, you're welcomed with a lot of snippets, kind of like sort of a teaser collage of all that you're going to see in the upcoming episode. And I always thought that is kind of an interesting way to segue your way into a show. And the other thing I always keep forgetting to mention is with Commander Koenig, I absolutely love it that his office is sort of like connected to the main huge control room, but when his doors are closed, he's shut off. But when he wants to be part of what's going on in the control room, then he just opens up the door. It's like an extension of the control room. I always thought that was pretty ingenious. So anyways, Ray Austin would go on to direct a few episodes considered some of the best episodes. A Matter of Time, I think, is one. Missing Link and End of Eternity are the two. This one in particular is not thought as well as maybe, I don't know if it should or not, but it is seen by some as one of the weaker, if not the weakest episode of the entire first season. And really, again, we're back to the writing issues, plot holes. Quick synopsis. We're dealing with Moonbase Alpha is dealing with yet a new phenomena, and one that really strikes at the heart of this idea that Space 1999 is, I really am starting to believe this, more of a child of the Outer Limits Twilight Zone than it ever was of Star Trek or anything like that. Even though it takes place in space, it is birthed out, of course, out of UFO, right? The producers, the creators, Sylvie Anderson, Jerry Anderson. But anyways, some of it has to do with, in terms of the criticisms have to do with like, the synopsis here. The Moonbase Alpha, again, this phenomena is like a far-ranging probe from the planet Triton. And basically it is a reconnaissance probe to assess ongoing threats to its home planet and to, if need be, obliterate those threats. And so when it approaches Moonbase Alpha, the problem or the assessment has to do much with planet Earth. And very quickly, this probe, reconnaissance probe, which it refers to itself as the Eyes of Triton, quickly assesses the need to basically not only obliterate Moonbase Alpha, but to obliterate Earth, because it sees it as a threat. As you move on through the episode, a few things become apparent. One, when we're assessing this threat, at least from Moonbase Alpha's perspective, Professor Bergman, tells us that, well, computer doesn't have any idea what's going on here. It doesn't know Triton. I don't know anything about it. And then steadily on in this show, he will acquire information that he will relate to us as a viewer, that some would look at and go, well, how did you know that? How did you come up with that? Because we're not really given any reasons. More than a plot hole, I think we gotta remember, he is the professor, and he is quite he's one that philosophizes quite a bit. He's one that is probably a student of both history and philosophy, and probably has a lot of interesting hobbies dealing with astronomy or Earth history, or a lot of things. And he probably has accrued a lot of information in his hobbies off to the side, and while they may not be at the forefront of his mind, with some effort he can go back, dig in, find some things that will become very relevant. And none of this is really seen clearly, and so it almost kind of, I don't know. When this, there are 3 trips to this probe by an Eagle ship, and the first one gets bounced back pretty roughly. I think Alan Carter survives, but the other guy does not survive. Koenig and Carter will then lead another failed attempt, but one that improves upon the mistakes of the earlier one. Now they have a little bit more information on what they're dealing with, and Professor Bergman has constructed ingeniously a way for Eagle 1 to penetrate this probe's force field and try to make its way in. Well, that one fails, but their return to Moonbase Alpha is a much larger achievement. The final attempt is a successful attempt, and that's where Koenig and a few will, not only will they find a way to get into the probe, but then they will confront the Eyes of Triton with some interesting information that apparently they just didn't know. And here it is, spoiler time. Apparently, one of the things that Professor Bergman will realize is that Triton no longer exists as a planet. Well, nobody told this reconnaissance probe as it was going out obliterating every perceived threat. And so when Koenig has this information and they ingeniously find a way of basically cutting the transmission, basically this probe has been, it takes control of Helena Russell and basically utilizes her in a very similar way that Star Trek the Motion Picture will in its whole story about V'ger and everything. Of course, obviously, this show came first before that Star Trek movie. That's interesting, right? And so they're able to basically to come up with an ingenious idea of not only breaking through, but getting Koenig and a few in there, and just an opportunity for Koenig to confront the powers that be within this probe. And as Helena Russell is like, she's kind of like a held hostage, but she's being controlled by this probe to relay critical information back to the probe. But on this final attempt to get in, she will relay information that they are basically force feeding, almost, like a virus in a way, but it's information. And ultimately, when the probe is faced with its own home planet's obliteration and non-existence, then suddenly its purpose is null and void, and it suddenly self-destructs. Koenig and the few are able to get out of there and get back. Helena ends up being fine and happy ending in the end. And Koenig Bergman is left with just some philosophic thoughts about Triton and how knowledge might have been their final demise. And so it's interesting. So plot holes, writing. Here's my big question. If I had one plot hole criticism, my own personal, from just watching it, if the probe, this reconnaissance probe, is basically evaluating information that's pouring out of Moonbase Alpha's computer via a person that's being controlled, right? Wouldn't you think that they would have realized quickly that Moonbase Alpha is a moon that was in the orbit of Earth that's been, ripped out of its orbit due to a terrible accident, and Earth in itself is in a cataclysmic state. I don't think Earth is going to be a threat to anyone anytime too soon. In fact, that is the interesting part of the backdrop story is we know from the pilot episode that Earth is a mess, and Moonbase Alpha, quite frankly, is a mess. And so when assessing threats, you would have thought that as wise and, as this probe reconnaissance type of intelligence is, they would have easily, quickly assessed that this is just a floating off moon. These people are just trying to, exist from day to day, and Earth is in an absolute mess. We don't have to worry about that. Move on. And so, to me personally, that might be the biggest question. I'm not sure if I had another one. I do want to. It is interesting though. There's this use, and I don't know exactly what it's called, but I think it's this use of this prismatic kaleidoscope filter that creates, I think, if that's what it is, this weird sense of images that involve, like, it's like a prism effect, but you see these color dots and stuff. Rob Zombie used a similar effect in his remake of Halloween, and and you see it again in this episode. And I don't know if it's just a 70s thing or what, but it got me to looking and digging into that, and that is an interesting visual effect. How can I not go on and on and on about the visuals in this episode or this series? The practical effects, whether it's just the moon, the camera's perception of the moon against the space. Everything just looks so beautiful. It's amazing, this show, how everything holds up from 75, 76, how everything just holds up, even on Blu-ray. It just looks absolutely beautiful. I think that's all I really want to say. It is a good episode in terms of continued character development. Dr. Matthias and his relationship with as a doctor to Helena is interesting. He gets a little bit more chance in this episode to expand. Alan Carter, we see his assertiveness even grow more and more. His willingness or ability to seemingly stare Koenig down and basically just be argumentative with him, which is amazing. But then again, the state of the moon is in right now, and everyone's lives are on a daily, it's, their existence depends on day to day. Maybe some of these things are more allowable under these circumstances, but it allows for the growth and development of some of these characters. Of course, Koenig and Helena will continue to grow. Bergman continues just to impress. And I think overall I was pretty impressed with this episode. I really dug it. Some of these episodes take a little more, more than one or two viewings, right? But impressive. So anyways, this concludes Disc 1. So the next episode, I believe, is Earthbound, Disc 2, and guest appearance by none other than Christopher Lee. Just stew on that for a while. So, my ongoing Space 1999 series, Disc 1, Beyond, as we dig into Disc 2 and Episode 5 with Earthbound. Man, I hope you're digging it. Check out the other stuff I'm doing. As always, winning these things off with Go Bills.